Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is just learning. Failure is just growth. We're going to fail every single day. And I think failure is a beautiful thing. I'm not afraid of it. I've failed many times in my life, and that's where I've learned the most.
Who doesn't want to be a great leader? A leader who's calm under pressure, insightful, respected, well-liked. But what does it take to become a great leader? Hey, I'm Boo, and welcome to my podcast. The Few Leadership Podcast defines great leadership and what great leadership looks like. And I've found some of the world's best leaders or experts in the field of leadership to help you accelerate your leadership journey so you can be an ace at the game of leadership. If you're ready to rethink everything you know about leadership, if you're excited about accelerating your leadership journey, let's strap in and ignite your leadership potential. Okay, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Few Leadership Podcast, the speaker series. And man, we have just had some phenomenal people, just phenomenal human beings who really shared much of themselves in their journeys to help you guys listening to this accelerate your own leadership journey. Remember, if you like the last podcast and you forgot, leave a review wherever you're watching this. It might be YouTube, it might be on your preferred podcasting platform. And also just make sure you like it, connect, stay in touch so you see each episode as it comes to, I always find podcasting people like Joe, today's guest, super hard. I mean, it's so difficult to be in the same virtual space as someone as inspirational as this guy. So we're talking to the coach of the US wheelchair rugby team, which I believe is called Murderball. He is an inspirational keynote speaker, a counselor, a coach, all-round superhuman human. Joe Delagrave, mate, thank you so much for coming on The Few. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Boo. Appreciate it.
Man, I had the chance to hear you speak a little bit and connect with you very briefly a year ago. So I've been looking forward to this podcast for a very, very long time. Mate, tell us a little bit about wheelchair rugby. I mean, I watch those games, and I think it is one of the most aggressive forms of sport on the planet. Tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting sport, adaptive sport, the only full contact sport in the Paralympic Games. And when you first see it, you're just like, what are these guys doing? I always joke that like the very baseline idea of it is crippled people smashing into other crippled people trying to make each other more crippled, which is kind of like a huge oxymoron, but like that's kind of what you see. But then there's like the strategy and elite athletes and, up and down the court. So it's played on a basketball court, regulation basketball court without the hoops. We have goals at each end, 4-on-4. You're trying to get the ball across the goal for a one try, which equals 1 point. And then on defense, you're just trying to stop them from doing so. Ton of strategy involved and different things like that. But that's really the genesis of it and the framework of it.
Are you intimidated? I mean, you must be mildly intimidated before you go out and play a game, because some of those collisions and some of the things that happen there, you can't plan for. Is there a kind of a healthy anxiousness before you get out on the court?
Yeah, I remember my first time going to a gym and getting in a rugby chair and playing, and I was like, well, and the first hit happens, and you're like, okay, this isn't too bad. And yeah, you have some spills and stuff like that, but at first you're a little timid, or you're like, let's do this. And I think it's just one of those sports for me when I was looking for an adaptive sport to play that really truly smashed stereotypes in a metaphorical and a real way of hey, yeah, I'm just an athlete out on the court using a rugby chair to do my thing. But that's really what led me to fall in love with the sport.
You can't be angry once you finish it. There's like nothing left. You can't have anything left inside of you once you come off the court after a game.
Yeah. It's a great therapeutic session, kind of like a rage room would be for people. So now it's great.
Look, mate, now when you're a teenager, I would expect that this probably wasn't your desired pathway in life. This wasn't what you were training for, what you went to college for. You're a Div 2 footballer. You had one of these moments in life that I guess everyone has a moment in life, but probably not as extreme as yours. So firstly, can you just explain what adaptive sports are? And secondly, what happened for you to be in this world?
Yeah. Adaptive sports recently in the last couple of Paralympic Games really taken the main stage. Paris did a fantastic job of highlighting that across viewership and over numerous countries blew records out of the water as far as Paralympic Games. But, wheelchair basketball, people know that, and swimming, archery, whatever. Pretty much any sport that's played can be adapted some different way. And I had no idea they really existed besides maybe wheelchair basketball. When I was 19, I'd gone through high school playing the traditional American sports of basketball, football, baseball, kind of you name it. I was playing it. Played college, like you said, college football in Division II. And so I was a year into my football career in college and went home for the summer to Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, which is right on the Mississippi River bordering Iowa. And we were out on the boat with my buddies that were back from college as well. We were high school buddies and out in the channels of the Mississippi. And we usually went into a back channel, or a back slough is what we call it, where the water's a little more calmer, and we'd kneeboard fish. Do a guy, I mean,
Your boy do.
Boat. Yeah, do a little 14-foot boat, little 35 horsepower motor. So like nothing really special, but to us, it was like the coolest thing ever, and a lot of freedom and a lot of summer nights on that boat.
There's a lot of country songs around that thematic.
Oh, it's one. Yeah, exactly. And I hit my buddy. I'm sitting on the boat watching Adam, who was kneeboarding, and hands behind my head, enjoying the summer day. And my buddy Kyle was driving, hits the bottom of the river accidentally, because you never know how deep or shallow the water is in the back sloughs, which we knew to look for logs and different things like that. And for the most part, we were pretty smart on the river, because the river is one of those things that is can be dangerous at times. But for this, it was just a freak accident. It hits the bottom with the motor accidentally. I flew backwards. The chair breaks that I was sitting in, fly backwards, hit my head on the front of the boat, inside the boat. And from right there, hit my head and snapped my neck at the C6 and 7 level. 6 and 7 vertebrae down from the base of your skull. So in the matter of a second, went from a 6'6", 260-pound football player to I'm paralyzed.
Is that what was going through your mind, like in that moment, or is it just like total confusion?
Not quite. Yeah, not quite in that moment. I blacked out for less than a minute, but woke up, and my buddy Kyle and Adam are looking down at me, and of course tears are in their eyes and kind of freaking out on it. But we were all lifeguards growing up, and they knew not to move me and asked me a few questions as they're calling 911 and get me rescued off the boat. But those questions were ones that I was like, ooh, something's wrong on a bigger level. They asked me if I could move my leg, and when I sent the signal from my brain down through my spinal cord into my leg, subconsciously, like we all do, and we're moving our hands, arms, whatever, nothing happens. And so that freaked me out. And they're like, can you feel it? And I reached down and felt my leg, and it was like I was feeling someone else's leg. So I knew something was wrong. And they told me at the local hospital, hey, you've sustained a spinal cord injury. We're going to need to med flight you to a bigger hospital where you'll need to have surgery.
Dude, and when does the world of denial translate into the world of acceptance in when you have an accident like that?
Yeah, I think for me, it was this process, right away, even when they're telling me, hey, you have a spinal cord injury, 3 days after my surgery is when I was kind of coming to everything. And the doctors are telling me, you're not going to walk again. Less than 3% chance that you'll walk again. You're going to be in a wheelchair the rest of your life. And I'm like, we got football camp in a month. Like, how long is this going to take me? And as I'm starting to attack physical therapy and occupational therapy, and I always had a positive attitude that just innately came and think, from a higher being type of situation. But there's this process of grieving that comes. And whenever I'm mentoring young guys from hospitals that are sustaining spinal cord injuries, I'm just like, you give it a little time, but there's this window of really 1-2 years where you're figuring this out, and you're either life's going to go on with or without you. And I think when I had that in the hospital was this picture of, I remember it vividly. My accident happened in July. All my friends from high school were back, and they're going off for their colleges and whatnot at the end of the summer. And so August happens. I'm still in the hospital, of course, and they say their goodbyes going back to college. And it was just like this light bulb went off of like, life's going to go on with or without me, because they're going on back to college, going back their sophomore years. And I'm stuck in this hospital, rehabilitating and trying to figure out what life looked like in a wheelchair. And for me, I'm like, okay, this is something that I need to not necessarily get over, but learn how to live with.
Were you holding on to that 3%? Did you think that you were going to be one of the 3% that through therapy and rehabilitation, that it was bad now, but I'm going to get there?
Yeah, for about a year, I was like, I'm going to walk again. Even like in the hospital, I'm like, I'm going to try to walk out of this hospital. And I think that mentality helped me with like attacking physical therapy, occupational therapy. There was a goal there, right? And then as time went on, and the doctors were like, about 2 years is when the nerves are either going to come back or not come back. And from there, there's some plateauing that happens and whatnot. And for me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to, bear weight on my legs and figure stuff out and do a bunch of physical therapy and occupational therapy and attack this. And I did for the next about year and a half, 2 years. But really when stuff wasn't coming back, I'm like, how do I live this life? And, for me, it was like, all right, I need to go back to school. I didn't want to live with my parents the rest of my life type of thing. After the hospital, I went back, live with mom and dad.
Sorry, yeah, man, I don't want to interrupt. Excuse me for a second, but I just want to frame this, right? I want to frame this for people who have a bad day, who are afraid of a life decision in which they have a choice, right? And what I would love for you to help people who, I mean, you can have a chronic condition, which is being in a job you hate and a life you hate for 10 years. People just build that chronic acceptance of a bad situation, right? So what I think would be like really powerful is kind of, someone said to me once on the podcast that no matter what you do when it comes to growing, there's a painful moment. And that once you accept that and you accept the pain and accept the things you can't control, then the growth happens. You've done a great job of talking about the grief, but I'd just really love to get down into some of that darkness of that moment, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have a choice, but like when you're really, and you're a positive guy, right? But I would imagine there would be, what were the things that kind of lifted you up in those darkest moments for you?
Yeah.
I think that's what people are afraid of. They don't want to go there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of times I don't even remember the darkest parts in that hospital room because of all life that's lived in the last 22 years almost now. But when I think about it and go back, like, why did I have the positive attitude? Why was I able to kind of navigate that through the dark moments, which the first 2 years really going back to it were really dark. And so I think there's three things there. There's one, I think there's an element of faith that needs to come from, and different for everyone. I get that. But for me, a faith in God was really, really important there, because there's like what you said there, like I could not control whether or not I'm going to be in this wheelchair or not. I can work as hard as I want to. And I know a lot of people in wheelchairs in that first years and sustaining a spinal cord injury, they're working their butts off trying to walk again. And for some of us, it just doesn't happen. And so one is like dealing with, there is still purpose in life. There's still a life to live. For me, I think it was a big identity thing. I think that's something that men in particular struggle with throughout their lives in different ways, on whether their identities in work, whether their identities in their family, whether their identity, like whatever it is, and it gets ripped away. Like mine did. My identity back then was I'm a big, rough, tough football player. And now I'm not.
Yeah.
And what's this look like? And I'm looking in the mirror, seeing a dude in a wheelchair. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what's masculinity now? What does this all mean? What's this look like? And so having faith that there's a purpose in my life still and a way forward, and what that looks like, I don't know, but I know that like I want to move forward with life. Two was a community. I think a community for me was huge for navigating some of that darkness in those first couple months and couple years, really. That was friends from high school, my coaches from high school, friends from college, teammates from college, my coaches in college, coach that still I talk to once a month, 22 years later. And just a really amazing guy that's just like, I care about you as a person, which was monumental. And so like having those people be able to be in my life, and me being able to be real, I'm like, hey, I'm struggling with sitting in this wheelchair, looking in the mirror. I'm struggling with even taking pictures of me in this wheelchair and navigating that. And then three, having those close-knit people. The community is one thing, but those close-knit people that I call human guardrails that are going to lift you up when you need it, but also kind of like pull you back and say, whoa, what are you doing here? And that was probably a year and a half after my accident. And I'd kind of ate through some feelings there, ballooned up to like 285 pounds. I had a buddy that was like, dude, you're getting fat. Like, what's the deal here? Are you going to do it? Like, you need to figure out a sport. You need to figure out some exercise, whatever. hard conversation. I was completely oblivious to it and blind to it because I'm just like, whatever, man. I'm in this wheelchair, kind of feeling sorry for myself. And he's like, let's go weigh you. And ended up weighing myself and realized I was that big. And like that conversation led me into working out again and figuring out like, what do adaptive sports look like? Maybe I should get involved in some of these. And like, that was the first part of me diving into wheelchair rugby, was that conversation from a buddy that loved me enough to go, hey, what are you doing here, bud?
And what did life look like when you're 19 in terms of who you were going to be? And then how did that change? And how do you feel like in a sliding door moment? Because again, people have regret. They look back to, I'm trying to ask these questions for people that kind of do live with regret, and to like, what were those two different life models? What do they look like?
Yeah. One second I'm 19, playing college football, figuring out my degree, figuring out what everyone at 19 is like, what am I going to do with my life? What kind of job am I going to have after this? What am I going to, the whole thing of like kind of a dreamer's mentality for me and what life was going to look like. And he definitely had goals on wanting to be a family guy and, work in different jobs, something in sport. I love sports. I knew that would kind of drive that. And then on the flip side, when I had the accident, in those dark moments, didn't feel a way forward in that regard of like, am I going to be able to have a family now? Am I going to be able to get a job with a disability? Sports are over. So that's out of the picture because I was 19 and completely ignorant to what adaptive sports were, just being real there. But slowly I realized that like the way forward, and really I think in leadership and when we're going through tough times, is we think like we've got to like bite off the elephant all in one bite and we got to get it figured out today. And that's it. And like, really like the choice for me was incremental. The first choice was like, yeah, get in this wheelchair and figure this out. And the second choice was like, hey, I'm going to go back to school. Like I can still go back and my brain works and I'm a smart guy and let's go figure this out and go back to school and figure out what I want to do. The next choice is like marrying my wife, who was there for me every single day at 19 years old herself in the hospital room, like this amazing woman that showed an immense amount of love, so much love that I ended up breaking up with her for a little bit because I was like, I don't know if this is kind of crazy.
That's a lot.
But
we got to raise the bar too, right?
Yeah. We ended up getting married, and that choice, and then the choice of emailing some guys on what wheelchair rugby looked like, and these incremental choices. Are you going to make the choice? Are you going to feel sorry for yourself? Are you going to make the choice, or are you going to find an excuse? And really, it's like that victor mentality. That's this dichotomy sometimes. I'm like, I could play the blame game. Like I was just sitting in a boat. I wasn't doing anything. My buddy wrecked the boat, and now I'm here. Like I just blame Kyle the rest of my life. And I think some people are stuck in that moment of like, let's just play the blame game, because really bad things happen to people sometimes, or they're blaming their boss, or they're blaming, whatever it is. And
well, that's easy, right? Because then you don't have to do anything.
It's super easy. It ends up being pretty lazy. Let's look in the mirror for a second. Like what can you do? And what do you have? And are you grateful for those things that you have? Like I'm looking in the mirror and like, yep, can't walk. My legs don't work. Half my body, my abs don't work. Hands don't work very well, but I've got use of my arms. I can push a wheelchair. And if I can push a wheelchair, like getting in that wheelchair and then figuring that out, like what does that look like? And like that was the first choice, and then on from there.
If you're enjoying the show, I'd just like to ask of you a little favor. We're on a mission here to ignite the world's leadership potential. We need to reach out to as many leaders as we possibly can. So if you're enjoying the show, I just ask you to leave a review, to subscribe, to help introduce this podcast to other leaders to join you on your journey to flawless leadership. We're going to head back to the episode now. I hope you've enjoyed what you've learned today. Please remember, let's ignite a movement of flawless leaders. Subscribe, leave a review. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, you said something. A lot of people say this and they don't realize the power of this particular phrase, incrementally. I think the strength in you, and I think the great learning point for leaders is every one of those decisions could have gone each way. Every one of those decisions could be, I won't reach out to somebody in the wheelchair rugby world. I won't do anything about my health and fitness. And everyone around you would probably excuse you, except for those really tight friends that are like, no, dude, get off your ass, do what you need to do, and don't allow yourself to wallow. And I think those 3 points you made, I mean, they're just points for life, right? Like faith, there's always something bigger than you. there's a bigger plan. Community, be in the right environment, be around the right people, and have that super tight community where you just have these beautiful people around you that honesty is the biggest value that they have. And they're going to tell you, I think that's, incredibly powerful. Now, let's move into your kind of leadership role now, right? And you talk about how you counsel other kids and other folks that have been through the same experience as you. And one of the hardest things about a coach, right, is that your job is to kind of facilitate their journey. You can't make anyone do anything, right? You can't tell someone what to do. So when you show up in a leader in those capacities, I think any coach is a leader, no matter what you do. If you're coaching somebody, you're a leader. How do you get those breakthrough moments? I mean, how do you help guide another human being down a pathway that's good for them when they maybe just don't want to go there?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is creating an environment in our program, and specifically with wheelchair rugby with the USA team, create an environment for them to learn and grow in, which is an environment of failure. I think a lot of time, and we're in high performance, our program is historically great. We've never missed out on a podium in world championships or Paralympics in our history, and happy and proud that I've continued on that legacy as a coach the last 4 years. But I think for us, and for me specifically as a leader, like, I want to show up in an act of service. And the biggest thing for me is going like, guys, there is room to grow and fail. And we're going to have play, like, it's an offensive game, but we're going to mess up plenty of times throughout the game, plenty of times throughout practice. And there's certain situations where it is an experiment out there and you're welcome to fail. The biggest thing, I think, that some people say that or hear that and they're like, BS, dude, like high performance, like whatever you like. But I think the flip side of that is you have room to fail. It is okay to fail. It's not okay to learn from your failure. And that's where I think a lot of people get stuck. And I think a lot of people lead wrong when they're like, you can't fail, you can't fail, you can't fail. Or maybe like, yeah, you can fail, but I'm going to sub someone else in, or you can fail, but we're going to find a different player. Is giving them the chance to learn from that failure. And that's their personal responsibility to grow in that. And then two is, and we talk about this all the time, we have a lot of conversations. Our sports psychologist is amazing, Dr. Margaret Smith. We have a lot of conversations off the court, sometimes led by her, sometimes we collaborate with it as well, sometimes led by me. But when we're talking through that, we're talking a lot about our camaraderie, our chemistry, our dynamics together, that we're going to show up in ways that we're going to hold each other accountable, including me. I think being able to have those conversations off the court, especially in this adrenaline fueled sport where we're smashing into each other and it's fast paced, we're scoring, between 50 and 60 goals a game. And so it's super quick. And when we communicate on the court, it's probably going to sound a lot different than when we communicate off the court. Communicating off the court, we're talking about, do you care about each other? We're talking about like how you want to show up, how you want others to show up for you. And then on the court, we can be really direct with each other, which is super fun to hear from the athletes and then from me as well, because it's rooted in a place of love. It's rooted in a place of caring, to where we can get on each other a little bit in competition, in practice, and we know it's rooted in a safe place.
That's so powerful to have the juxtaposition of both, right? Because I think business tends to work down the let's not talk very nice to each other and let's just get things done, and it's just a constant frustration, right? It's almost like you're always in the game without the stepping back and the people piece, which is like, hey, look, I got you, man. I'm here for you, and I'm sure you guys must have some pretty deep conversations as well around life. I came from a wonderful culture of a fighter pilot, right? Like everyone's the same, everyone's different, but yeah, there's a model to operate within, right? To unlock your full potential. And I want to just touch on that piece for a minute, culture, right? So you don't win medals without a good culture, yeah? So we've covered off the fact that you guys are all honest with each other, you demonstrate care, have empathy. What else do you feel are the attributes of the national team in terms of creating, but also sustaining that as new players come in and players fit out? What do you believe is the most important elements to sustain that winning culture?
Yeah, I think, and this is like, these are two buzzwords, especially in the speaker world. And I think in corporate, huge buzzwords of authenticity and vulnerability, huge buzzwords. And they're almost like thrown around probably too much at this point, but if done right, they're true. So I don't think you can be authentic without being vulnerable. And I talk a lot about using our sport and what we're doing, whether you're an athlete, your coach, on staff, whatever, as a conduit for something greater, which should be like your purpose in life shouldn't be playing wheelchair rugby. Like hopefully that's not the case, but and having individual conversations and team conversations on like what's their purpose outside of rugby? What are they planning for? What are they doing? Whether that's they're in school, whether they're working, whether they're starting a family, whatever that looks like. And so being vulnerable on these are my goals outside of rugby. And I think that helps root some authenticity of showing up. You get to show up not just as an athlete, not just as a pawn on the team, not just as the next guy that's going to fill the role or go out and chase after medals. Because what happens is inevitably throughout a 4-year cycle in this sport, there's going to be some adversity, which we faced in the last quad with some different guys not being on the team anymore, or maybe I cut some guys that ruffled some feathers and whatnot. But in order to get that true buy-in, me as a leader, I need to be authentic. I need to be vulnerable and lead from the front. And then I think culture kind of takes care of itself because it's all marinating in this act of vulnerability with each other. And we get to be authentic. And then from there, the call outs that we have, whether off court or on court, like people know they're coming from a place of service, a place of love, a place of understanding who you are, because we've had those conversations already. And I think a lot of times people in leadership roles, they're like, I'm a leader, therefore I get to have the keys to just call people out. And and it might be rooted in a place of like caring, but we haven't talked about it. So like, why am I, like when someone call, hey, you got to do this better, XYZ, whatever it is. And I'm like, you haven't picked up the phone and called me in 6 months. Like, why do I care?
Yeah.
Versus like showing up every day and at camps and competitions. And now we can have that conversation where it's probably a lot more real and authentic than the other side.
But I think what you're also inferring there is you've got to have standards when you're making those tough calls, right? And you're cutting people. Again, to talk about my experience with this is when you start on pilot training and, 3 people end up getting to fighter jets and 27 don't. And their dream gets cut out from under them because there's like a baseline standard. And the hardest thing, I think, about being a leader in the modern era where standards are eroding, in my humble opinion, is being a bastion of the standard and enforcing it. Do you find as a leader, like when you get to that point and you do need to, I'm sure you wrestle with decisions about cutting people off a team. I mean, there's no human likes to be that human, right?
Terrible.
And I think it's one of the decisions a lot of leaders avoid, and they accept having a team that participates in a game rather than wins a game. What kind of insights do you have with wrestling that demon and getting to the point where you can do that in a way that is human, right? But also the fact that you have a standard in which you operate in as a culture and as a team, where almost it's like the person on the other side kind of, we used to say, before you fail and get kicked off our pilot course, you can kind of see it coming because of the standards. So give me a little bit of an insight into how you see standards and how you make those tough decisions.
Yeah, you're spot on with standards. I mean, we have, and really in elite level sport, it's all about the physical standard of where you're at as an athlete within our classification system, within wheelchair rugby and whatnot. But in the certain levels of disability that we have, there's a standard of what your sprint time should be, a standard of, and really like an elite standard of where you're setting the mark versus kind of where here's the average over the course of the last 10 years or whatnot. And so different metrics there that we baseline off of and really gives our athletes an objective to shoot for if they're not at that point yet. And then as far as it's a subjective sport, and I'm really, I really try to protect the culture there. If your culture is really good, you might have an outlier that's performing really well that can be added into the culture and not negatively affect it. But if it gets to be 2 or 3, all of a sudden your standards are, as far as the culture go, are probably going to drop with dynamics and what that looks like. So that's something that I look at. And then, with cutting people, it's excruciating, but my biggest thing and the feedback that I get to is just being honest. Like when I have that conversation, it's rooted in honesty and giving them, it might be harsh feedback. They might not want to hear it, but I think after the fact, 6 months down the road, year down the road, they're thankful that, hey, I'm being straight up honest with that. Our selection committee is being straight up honest with that on what we're trying to achieve and where we saw them at and why they're not on the team anymore. I think those points, like you said, avoiding it is just going to make your culture worse because
Yeah.
there's whispers in the locker room of like, hey, no, he's giving feedback that's completely bogus and BS because he didn't want to have a conversation. He's avoiding having that tough conversation and whatnot. And then inside the locker room with the team that we do have, still having those honest conversations. If the standard's not there, we're struggling a little bit in some areas, is having those honest conversations. And a lot of people avoid them because they're hard. And really reframing those conversations from hard conversations to growth conversations. Can't grow unless you know. And so making sure that we have that back and forth on communication.
Can't grow unless you know. Love that. and you're willing to experience a little bit of pain. I remember, maybe 10 years ago, I went to a big event and I got to listen to the national coach of the Australian soccer team, which was really the soccer team we had that almost, was almost a contender for the World Cup. But we're a small country, not many soccer. We didn't get there anyway. But one of the things he said, which I'd love to get your insight in, is he says, what you don't realize as a national coach is you only get these players for a short period of time. They're off living their lives. You're kind of trying to keep tabs with their skill set, their physicality, and then they all come together and you're in your camp, and all of a sudden camp is not kind of what you're expecting. And you've got the players that are the big name players who are great in the club, but when they come into the national team, they kind of coast a little bit. Or how do you find leading? And, dude, you got a lot of pressure, dude. You're like a national team coach. I mean, you're living in the spotlight and you're running and inherited a very good team. I mean, how do you lead in that environment where you have these short windows of execution? You've got to bring all these disparate people together, get them playing off the same song sheet, then go to an Olympic Games and actually win.
Yeah, it is a recipe for disaster, really. I mean, and he's the coach that's talking about it is spot on. Like you're only with each other. We're with each other maybe 7-8 times a year for a week, 2 weeks at a time, depending on the camp or competition. But really, I think the magic of it is what we're doing through a Zoom call, what we're doing through Teams, what we're doing through phone calls, and staying connected, which is the hardest thing. I think COVID taught us a lot about being able to do that and stay connected through online resources. So that's one. Two, I think for me, the biggest point of buy-in, and Nick Saban talked a lot about this, the Alabama football coach, and is if my captains buy in to what we're doing, the team culture is going to be great. If they don't, it's going to stop with them, and then it's going to be a mess. And so having really good conversations with our athlete leaders to help them communicate that message and make sure the locker room's dialed in, I think that's huge for team culture, huge for success in high performance. And so constantly having conversations, I think collaboration is super important. And sometimes coaches can shy away from that because we're like, hey, it's my way or the highway, and I've got it all right. And I think one of the biggest things I can do as a leader is say, hey, I'd love your idea on this. What do you think about this? To my captains, to different players on our team. And now they have even more buy-in because they're personally invested and their ideas get personally invested into the program. And another example of that is I'm a football guy. So from football, Kansas City Chiefs head coach, they have an entire day of practice where the players make up the trick plays. And so they can come to practice with ideas on making up trick plays and whatnot, and they get all excited about it. It could be completely goofy names, but it also creates buy-in. And they ended up running one of those in one of their Super Bowl victories, not this last year when they lost to the Eagles, but the year before, ran one of those for a touchdown that won the game. And so I think investing in your players and giving them autonomy within our system and what we're trying to do from that standpoint, that helps the buy-in.
I think that's just incredibly powerful, is to have the people executing the plan to be part of the creation of the plan as well, right? And you just completely remove that, do this and do it well into, I created this, I want to do it well. I want to, and I want to be that core human need of wanting to be seen and wanting to be heard. Because what I imagine then for you is you've got to be quite intentional about relationships. You can't just like switch off and then switch back on. I mean, I think a lot, some leaders fall into the trap of switching on when they have to and then switching off when they don't have to, right? When it's, we've got to get this initiative done. Come on, team, we can do it. And then, I don't care what you do at home. I don't know anything about your family. How do you make sure or what is your kind of mindset around that deliberate and intentional engagement?
Yeah. We have conversations all the time with the players and with our coaching staff, and being able to have the individual meetings with the player. And the biggest thing that we talk about, and this year, as we're diving into this, our first year of the quad leading into LA, and we have world champs next year, but which is a major tournament for us. But the biggest thing that we can talk to players about is role recognition and what their role is on the team. What's their role going to be in training camp? What's their role going to be at this next competition? And what can they expect? And I think the expectations that we have, whether it's, hey, you're going to be playing 2 minutes a game or you're playing 32 minutes a game, is that, like, if they know the expectations, they can do that role better versus, I don't really know what I'm playing. Coach doesn't know. Now they're down at the end of the bench whispering about it. Or it's like, hey, I need you, like, you're a cheerleader for this game. You're an energy guy, and that we call it BBE, big bench energy, USCWR, and the guys have a good time with that. But there's certain players that are working their butts off in practice, and then their job is BBE during games. And we've talked about that. And that doesn't mean, with role recognition, sometimes I think some players are like, well, I guess that's my role, and that's where I'm stuck. And we always talk about, like, this is your role now, but, like, this is where you can get to. And, like, you might be a backup player right now or a starting player right now, but there's always room to go up or down depending on what your performance is or how you're showing up or where that standard is, to bring that full circle. But I think that's super important for an athlete. I think athletes are in their heads mentally all the time already. So can I be honest with you about what your role is, how you can get a different role if you desire that. And we always desire that. We want competition, healthy competition amongst the depth chart. But really starting with that's super intentional, lets them know where they're at. I think unknown expectations leads to future resentment. And
so true.
If we make it known, now it's back on them. I love personal responsibility. I love that they have to look in the mirror and decide and make that choice, and they get an environment to fail in. So hopefully it's a pretty good success, environment for success for the individual athlete in our team.
Dude, that is an awesome environment. That is like, I don't think you can create a better environment than what you've created there, man. That's awesome. As usual, I have taken up way too much of your time. I don't think I've hit 30 minutes once. It's impossible, mate, with human beings as awesome as you. But as we come to the tail end of the podcast, like, I just kind of like to leave the listeners with 3 things that you've learned in life that you believe a leader can walk away off this podcast and implement within the next week to kind of make a bit of a step change in the way they approach their leadership journey.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's helped me, and to pass this on, it's no secret sauce or secret formula or do these 6 steps to change your life type of thing. It's, can you have a conversation with yourself? And it could be a spot where you're easily able to play the blame game, the lazy way out of, my boss did this, or I'm in a bad relationship and it's their fault, or I've had this disability or chronic injury or depression, or, whatever it is there's always that mirror that we see in the morning when we're brushing our teeth or making our hair look good or whatever it is, and going like,
dude, your hair looks good, man. I
appreciate it. You get the choice. You, like, every single day, we feel stuck a lot of times in this life with where we're at and those goals that we want to set and those dreams that we have. You get the choice each and every day on which side you're either going to get better, or you're going to get worse. There's really no net neutral. So it's making that choice. And then for me, it's, can you make that choice, and do you have people around you, 1 or 2 people, hopefully, that are around you that get to be that human guardrail for you. And when you tell someone your dream or goal, when you tell someone what you're trying to achieve, all of a sudden you get instant accountability with that person, because you guys are always already good friends. And so being able to voice that to them helps that choice even more, because you have some accountability there.
Awesome. You got one more, mate. That's 2 good ones.
Oh, three. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is just learning. Failure is just growth. We're going to fail every single day. And I think failure is a beautiful thing. I'm not afraid of it. Failed many times in my life, and that's where I learned the most. I was cut from my 2016 team, devastated, but I always look back on that and go, that was the most pivotal point in my career. It's what makes me a great coach and great leader, is failing there and learning, oh man, I had to look in the mirror, take a look, reevaluate some things. And I'm so glad that happened and that I did. Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah, I think importantly, the bit you may take for granted is who you are, is you've learned and applied from the failure. You haven't allowed failure to roll into another one and the same thing again and the same thing again, which is, incredibly inspiring. Hey, Joe, look, man, that was just for me, a gift to be able to spend 45 minutes with you, and for the generosity. I'm sure you've told your story many times, but it's an important one. And I think for the leaders listening to this, you know what, you can have a bad day. Don't be afraid of it, and do the work, look in the mirror and make the good choices to get yourself out of the funk. Joe, thanks so much for coming on The Few and sharing your insight with the leaders listening today.
Thanks
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, guys, if you're looking for Joe, scroll down into the show notes. There's plenty of details there. His show reel link is there if you want him to come and speak or inspire at an event. And, this is the second time I've had a chance to speak with Joe. I would have another 20, 30. If I had another 20, 30 opportunities, I'd seize them. So thanks again. Leave a review. Make sure you like it. Let's keep bringing on these fantastic guests onto the podcast.